Hey everybody, what's good? What's going on? JB here. We're back with another episode in this series on how to build secure networks. Yesterday we talked about one of my favorite topics, which was network access controls. And today we're going to be hopping into something else dealing with other types of network connections and things like that. And that is going to be network interconnections. And what I mean by network interconnections is kind of a few different things. So we have kind of different types of environments that might have very unique or subsections of their network or environment that need to be protected more than the rest of the environment. Or it could be something that's completely air gapped from the regular infrastructure. And then also different types of connections that we have with partner organizations where we might be sharing interconnectivity between the organizations for different types of data exchange. So that's kind of the scope that we're going at with this one today. And the reason it's a little ambiguous because I'm trying to make it be a little bit more suited for normal commercial and business organizations, because when we go and we look kind of in the checklist here that we've been using kind of as our guideline for jumping off into different types of conversations, most of the stuff that I've highlighted today that we're going to be talking about is really dealing more with very specific types of specialty Department of Defense networks. So it's really not applicable. But I think that there's some underlying security principles here that can be translated into different types of regular business and commercial environments. So keeping that kind of in perspective, let's talk about a few of these things. So this first one is talking about for this type of special environment that they have, that you need to make sure that it's documented within your documentation. So I would say that that's definitely the case when you're talking about different types of interconnections with different types of organizations and agencies. If you're doing any type of data exchange, maybe some type of domain trusts or things like that. These are things that you want to make sure are documented, not only kind of in the technical documentation, but then you're probably going to also have some policy documentation, and you might have maybe some type of memorandum of agreement between the two different types of organizations. And that is actually another control that is down here, is talking about memorandums of agreements. So I would say that that is kind of a good way to go. I had a question come in, so let me pop that up real quick. Hey, Kev. So what program is this? So this is actually, we're using the DISA network infrastructure policy STIG. Which is kind of like a high-level policy STIG. You might be familiar with other DISA STIGs before that are much more technical, like how to configure web servers or how to configure different types of networking devices. This one is a lot more just generic and overarching. It's not going to tell you to actually go and set a particular command on a device, but it's going to tell you, you should have, redundancy in certain ways. You should have network documentation. You should have different things like that. To view the STIGs in general, I'm using a tool called DISA STIG Viewer. The link for that is actually in the description of all of these videos. So if you actually go back to the first tip that we did when we were talking about documentation, if you just go on the YouTube channel and go into the playlist for the series, the first video there, we kind of spent maybe about 5 minutes or 10 minutes talking about DISA STIGs, why we're kind of using them as a jumping off point, as kind of good security best practices to use if you aren't really sure which direction you want to go in and how to secure different things. But if you have any more questions with that, drop them here, or you can hit me up afterwards. So we were talking about memorandums of agreement, documenting these types of interconnections or special networks that you have. Kind of continuing with that, and this is kind of an underlying theme that we've seen throughout in a few different ways, is just because you document something doesn't mean that you forget it after the fact, right? You need to be continually monitoring and updating these types of things. So in this case, we're talking about annual reviews being done on these interconnections. You want to make sure that the interconnections still need to be in place. From a technical perspective, you want to make sure that your access control rules that you have are still valid, it's still needed. You don't want to, have rules or services opened up that expand your threat surface when you actually don't need to have those. This next control here is talking about a special type of traffic or protected traffic that would be going, on a regular or unapproved environment. Again, taking this and jumping off into kind of the commercial aspect of this, it would be looking at if you did have some type of specialty environment within your organization. And I can think of a few different scenarios where this kind of makes sense. If you're talking about infrastructure where you're protecting stuff related to intellectual property, right? So let's say that you work for a company that's maybe a pharmaceutical company, or HIPAA information, or any other type of stuff dealing with the value of your organization that's related to IP. A lot of times there's separate infrastructure where stuff is kind of siloed off, and there might be some type of gateways between that. So from that perspective, looking at your normal environment and making sure that you aren't seeing data leakage is kind of what I would say that the purpose would be for. Let's see, got another comment come in. Let's bring this up. This tool is sick. Is there a free version to use in home? Yeah, I mean, so all this is, it's just a Java app that's reading XML files. So if you take a look at the show notes, the description, I have a link for how to get this particular piece of software. It's free. And then also where you can go and find all of the different technical implementation guides. So pretty much any type of vendor or OS that you can think of, there's hardening guides that are associated with it. And you can actually do and kind of manually go through it, kind of like what we're doing here. In reality, if you actually were going to implement different types of STIGs on your devices, this is a pain in the ass way to do it. This one is okay because it's more of a policy STIG, but like, let's say you were going to use a hardening STIG for like Windows 10, you actually would want a tool that would automatically scan your devices. So something like Nessus does automated compliance scans using STIGs. I would assume Qualys probably would do the same. There's a few vendors out there where you can do automated STIG scans depending upon whatever type of device you're connecting to. But yeah, check out the links. I have them in the description, so you can go and poke around and mess around with it. Again, this one is talking about traffic from a sensitive network being on a unapproved network. Kind of goes along the same with the above one. Classified circuit terminates in non-DoD facility. How I would take that and turn that into something that is business related would be if you're talking about maybe different circuits that you have, or VPN connections that you have to different partner organizations and things like that. You want to make sure that you are terminating these in places that they're approved to be. Again, we kind of talked about it a little bit before with the placement of firewalls, and we're going to talk about IDP and IDSs later on. But pretty much you want to make sure that you aren't putting or terminating circuits and connections into places where you lose visibility and where you lose the ability to actually scan the traffic looking for different types of threats. So that's what I would kind of correlate this one to. Again, this next one, we're talking about specialty networks and network interconnections and things like that. Again, goes back to documentation and approvals, right? And then continuously monitoring those from a technical perspective and from a policy perspective. And I think this last one here, kind of goes on the same thing as I was mentioning before about where you're actually terminating circuits, where you actually have VPN tunnels terminating in your environment. You just want to make sure that any type of connections that you have between these specialty networks or partner networks, that you are putting in the proper access controls, the proper monitoring, the proper screening, and pretty much just making sure that you're documenting that whole, you know, architecture and policies and why you're doing all that. Everybody has buy off on it, and you're, you know, staying actively engaged with that so that you don't end up 5 years down the road looking at something and wondering how somebody exfilled data out of your network because you forgot that you had a circuit or a connection that went off to some other partner organization that doesn't matter and you shouldn't be using anymore. And maybe that was a path that a cyber criminal is able to use to leverage to get into your environment. So that's kind of the gist of what I'm going at with these here today. So one other comment came in. Pop this one up. DISA STIG site also provides SCAP files for scanning. Yep. You can also use the SCAP files as well. Again, you could do that with, you know, Nessus for compliance scanning. So let me see if there was anything else there. I don't think so. Does anybody else have any other questions on any of this stuff? If not, then we can wrap it up for the day. Tomorrow, we aren't going to be doing another video in regards to the series. Instead, we're going to have a normal Wednesday live stream that will be at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. And that is going to be another review and walkthrough of a job posting. This time we're going to be looking at kind of an entry-level cybersecurity analyst, so maybe someone who would be trying to join a blue team or SOC. And we're going to walk through and see what some random company is asking for and talk about whether or not it makes sense. And if it doesn't make sense, we're going to try to, you know, make some sense of it. So, yeah, appreciate everybody dropping in. Appreciate the questions. Make sure you hit the like button. If you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and subscribe. Appreciate that. And yeah, hope everybody has a great rest of their evening, and we will talk soon. All right.